Good morning. So I'm just waiting for my sauna to heat up and then start my day. And I wanted to record a quick video while I'm waiting, just on a couple of things that I get asked all the time, every single day. And that is that I want to switch careers into visual effects, but I'm 35 years old, I've got kids, I am married, and I have a full-time job. So that ship has probably sailed, right? And that's typically the same thing that I get all the time, which is it's too late in life to go after my passion, the thing that I really care about. And because of that, I figured it's worthwhile addressing that I have so many students who've changed careers. I've got so many friends who I've coached into changing from IT, from architecture, from whatever, banking, into what they're doing now. I've got friends who are lawyers at 35 or 40 years old who decided I want to be a matte painter. And it's not so much about, sorry for that ridiculous lens flare, it's not so much about, you know, whether it's too late or not. It's about doing it intelligently. And that is that most of us, we figure, well, it's too late in my career, you know, I've got expenses, blah, blah, blah. And that's honestly the thing to take into consideration, is that as a kid, as a 18-year-old kid, we don't have many responsibilities. You know, it's kind of expected that we're gonna go through a few careers in our lifetime, and over time, you know, we're gonna change things up, we're gonna switch things out, and it's not that big a deal. But when you have those responsibilities, I'm trying to get away from that lens flare, when you have those responsibilities, it's very different, because you have people depending on you to make income. You have bills, you have everything, and you need to be congruent with that. So how do you successfully change careers later in life? And it's more about having a plan, having a strategy, you know, and that's the thing, is I've seen this backfire where people are like, okay, I'm gonna move to another city, I'm gonna move to LA, and I'm just gonna like start, you know, applying for jobs when I get there. And it's just like, you know, I've seen really bad results from people who didn't put in the work. They didn't put in the plan. They just figure, I'll show up the same way everyone else shows up in LA, like I'm gonna show up and be famous as an actor, and it doesn't work that way. You need to have a strategy. So when it comes to changing careers, think of it this way: like, you can test the waters, you can see if it's even something you want to do. Maybe you get into visual effects, you're like, wow, like this is a pretty volatile industry, it's definitely a lot of hours, and you know, maybe this is more of a hobby for me. Like, you don't 100% know. And so changing careers later, it's like this, you need to invest time into something, and the more you invest in something, the more you are invested in something, right? So if you go and try something out and it doesn't really work out, you can move on to the next thing, and that's fine. But the more that you invest in something, that's time that you're not getting back. So it's very different when you try something out and decide whether it's for you, or if you're deep into a career. I've got 20 years doing IT, I've got 20 years doing architecture, whatever it might be, and then to change careers, then you're invested. You were literally invested in that thing for 20 years. So it's a lot more work, and it means a lot more to change careers too. So what you need to do in a situation like this is like test the water first, see if it's even something you want to do before you go all in, because the grass is always greener. And for a lot of us, it's like, yeah, I've always wanted to do something like that, but sometimes the fantasy, the idea is more appealing than do it this way. Man, there's even a lens flare on the box, what the hell. Sometimes the idea is more appealing than the reality of it, and you got to keep that in mind too. I think the smartest thing to do when you're changing careers is simply to test the waters. You know, like, just because you're working 40 hours a week in a different career doesn't mean that you don't have an additional 110 hours, something like that, that you could be putting into other areas, 120, whatever it is. So the whole point is that you could start working on your reel, you could start learning all the material, you could start doing all this stuff, sending out your reel to places to see if you can moonlight on weekends. In other words, like, start doing side gigs, start doing small things, because that's typically where you're gonna get started anyway. So I mean, going on freelance.com or upwork.com, or going on a forum or whatever, just putting yourself out there, helping out on short films, finding places that aren't necessarily, you know, big studios, but they're willing to hire you for a gig, and you can start to actually see whether or not this is something that actually appeals to you. That's a good starting point, just to kind of test the waters, as well as that way you're getting experience and you're making some money from it as well. The thing is, like, let's just fast forward and say that you want to change careers completely, go all in, but you're afraid that it's too big a risk. By getting this initial experience, by getting out there, you're building yourself up in a way that when you have a reel that you're confident could land you a job, and sending it out to places, what you can do is just explain, like, look, I'm actually in a different career. When people start reaching out to you, you explain your situation, say, I'd love to work with you guys, however, I am in a different career and it's paying a lot more than what you can probably offer me right now based on my experience. So what I suggest is what you say to them, that I have a lot of vacation time coming up and I would love to try this out and to see if this is something that's going to work out. So simply using your vacation time as one example, or an unpaid vacation, whatever it might be, go and do something to say, hey, I'm going on vacation for a month. Go and do a job for a month. Instead of going away and having a fun vacation, use that time to invest back in yourself for the long term, okay? This is one of many different situations and scenarios that you can play out, but the idea, I think, is more important than anything else, and that is that you want to test the waters in a controlled environment where you can go away for a few weeks, you can try it out, knowing that you have a full-time job waiting for you back when you get home. And if it's paid vacation, then even better, you're getting paid from 2 different jobs. But at the same time, like, even if it's unpaid, if you say, look, I need to take a break, I'm burning out, I don't expect you guys to pay for it, I'm going to take a unpaid vacation for a couple of weeks, is that okay? And TV commercials can be 2 weeks, that can be nothing. And but this is a chance for you to prove to yourself that this is something you want to do. But more importantly, well, just as important is that you can prove to the employer and prove yourself that you're capable. Because what you want to do is initially make sure you have work lined up. If you're changing careers from one place to another, you want to make sure that you have something lined up. So going and working for someone on that trial period of 4 weeks or whatever, testing the waters for yourself, it's a chance, while they know your situation, to come back and say, hey, how did I do? What do you think? Do you think I have potential? Because that way they can tell you, like, look, honestly, it's going to take you a bit longer to get to where you want to go. Or, hell yeah, like, you're great. And if that's the case, then you can say, well, what are the chances you would hire me? Because again, you want to know that you can transition out into an environment where you've got that consistent income that you had from your previous job, right? So like I said, like, working weekends, getting up early and doing freelance morning and night, like, you need to invest in yourself. You need to put in the time, front load the time ahead of your career before you get into it. So there is always going to be discomfort when you're doing such a big shift. When you've invested 20 years into an IT career, I'll use an example, to then change into an entirely different career, like, you don't just click your fingers and expect great results. You need to put in work, you need to be doing late nights and all these other things, and let that, if anything, be an example of, like, what the industry is going to be like. It's going to be hard work. It's not the easiest industry to be in. And again, like, maybe that isn't for you. So the more that you're able to test it, the more that you're able to realize, like, okay, I'm not really enjoying this. Maybe it's time to go back instead of forward. But if anything, putting in that time at other studios on the side, on nighttime, whatever. I've got a friend of mine, he worked in an architectural firm in Detroit, and he started working for Blur Studio on weekends. And then he ended up moving as a supervisor into Blur. And just because you come from one industry doesn't mean that you can't transition to another, and maybe even use all the life experience you have, like, leverage that for your new career. Anything's possible, but again, working those weekends, proving yourself ahead of time, it's proving yourself, and it's also proving to yourself as well. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say, and I think that it's just important for you to strategize a little bit. Like I said, I'll paint one scenario, which is that I had someone call me. I guess it is pretty easy to get my number these days, but they called me on, like, a Saturday morning, and they're like, hey, I'm homeless, I'm in LA, I moved to Los Angeles, and I'm trying to get a job, and no one's hiring me. What do I do? I'm almost out of money, someone broke into my car, like, all this bad stuff had happened, and I felt terrible. at the same time, this guy was saying like, yeah, you know, I just picked up my bags and I went to LA, and like, yeah, no one's willing to hire me. Like, what's going on? Like, Allan, should I give up on my dreams and go back home, or should I wait it out? And that's one of the situations, like, that is not on me to tell you what, you know, what to do with your dreams. You know, like, you shouldn't have in the first place just picked up everything naively and gone to another city with nothing lined up. And that's just one of those things that I see people do, is like, you need to communicate, build these relationships. That's why I'm posting videos at the moment about how to build a relationship, because when you have those relationships, that's when you can move to another city knowing that you have work potentially lined up, you know people, rather than then starting to do all the work, you know. And I asked him, like, why didn't you start applying for jobs before you moved to a different city? And it's like, well, I did contact a few places, but everyone said just to contact them when you're in LA. And what they're really saying is, like, they don't want the responsibility of relocating you and all these other things. Like, but if you're in the city, great, they'll look at your stuff, but that's not a guaranteed job. What you should have done, and this is what one of my friends did, is he had the same experience. He's in Texas, he wants to work in LA. Everyone's telling him, like, if you're in LA, contact us. So he got a 310 number and just called up. He's like, hey, I'm in LA, can I come in? So he came in for an interview. They said, great, we'll hire you. When can you start? Okay, I'll start Monday. They didn't know that he flew back that weekend to Texas, packed up all his stuff, and moved out there that week. As far as they're aware, he just went home and he's like, cool, I got a job on Monday. You've got to front load the work. You got to put in the time. You got to put in the work. If you don't, then you're not going to get the results that you're expecting. Okay, and that's just it. Like, if other people are willing to put in the work and you're not, then that, you know, is also an indicator too. So just keep this in mind, because it is a huge investment switching careers, and I've seen so many people do it successfully, but there's also a lot of risk involved, and that's why you've got to have a strategy, you've got to have a plan, you've got to be smart about doing it. Anyway, I hope that helps. I thought I'd just do something a little bit different and more off the cuff. So I'd be curious about your feedback. I'm sure everyone's going to say, stop having lens flares on your head, this is kind of ridiculous, but yeah, I hope this helps. And again, it's one of the most common things that I get all the time, and I think that, you know, it's up to you to just be smart about it, you know, to lower the risk until there is zero risk involved in your decision, and as long as you have options, then, you know, you can go for it. But while there is risk, you need to weigh up the pros and cons. You need to do risk versus reward, and it's really about just eliminating all the risks. So going, like I said, on a vacation, or taking unpaid leave, or doing on the weekend or in your spare time, like whatever it is, test the water, see if it's for you, and also see if it's right, if you're right for the industry. In other words, if people say, yeah, you've got a future in this, awesome. If not, maybe go back, work on your reel, work on your skills a little bit more, looking at chipmunks climbing up the tree, and then try again. And you can continue to do this until you are ready, but don't just dive in there and expect to get those results, because it's a huge risk and you haven't thought it through. Okay, so just be smart about it. That's the only difference between being young and being older, is that you've got more to lose, but it just means you have more responsibility. So if anything, like, we change careers 2 to 3 times on average in our lifetime, so it's expected to be 40 years old and want to try something new. But be smart, have a strategy, have a plan, and even if people say get a 310 number, then to say, great, I'm in LA, you know, I'm only available for these weeks. Is that something you can do? Line it up, try and tee that up, and, you know, that way you can start to get those results and minimize the risk. I hope that helps. I'll leave it there. I'm gonna jump in the sauna and start my day. Okay.